Hey guys, I'm Tyler, the co-founder and CEO of Casa, and today we're going to talk about home inspection reports. So, if you're in the buying process, chances are that you've gotten one of these done with a home inspector. You've landed on this big 50-page document, and you're like, I don't know what to do with that. Obviously, your mortgage person asked you to get it. It should tell you more about your house. What we're really here to do today is to help you understand, kind of step by step, what is in this report, what matters to you, and the types of things you should be asking for, looking at, and trying to make sure you understand. And so we'll go through, a couple of these reports. This one that I got done, and one that a friend sent me, so that we can pull up examples of what we're talking about. We'll go through kind of the 20 most important things that we often look for, and typically in order of the report. And if you're curious to get this report done and have a conversation about it yourself, you should check out Casa, our app. Upload the home inspection report, and you can ask questions back and forth with the AI to understand, what you're looking at and see what are the problems of the home that you're thinking about buying. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, most reports typically follow kind of a pretty specific structure. Varies person to person, but oftentimes it goes kind of the roots of the house into the internal system. So think like structural stuff, exteriors, the roof, the attic. You look at some electrical, HVAC, plumbing kind of components. You look at appliances, garage, any other optional systems like a sound system, and then look and kind of note the quality of the interiors. So I try to keep each section kind of split out, concise, and without further ado, let's jump in. So first thing to look at really is the foundation. The foundation is really the slab or footing that everything of your house is going to sit on. So like if it moves, if it cracks, if things aren't sticking, it's a massive repair. You really need to look for language that just says like it's performing as intended. There's no stress. If you see things like active movement, expanding cracks, a bunch of moisture, that's something to really poke into. You may even want to talk to your home inspector, see if they know a structural engineer that can really come and give a second opinion. It's not to scare you, like some of this movement does happen over time slowly, but if it's something that's been around for a while, is deteriorating, that's a big red flag and could be a big expense for you. Second thing we look for is really the exterior. So like, what does the grading look like of the house? What is the drainage? Basically, like how does the soil slope, and when you have water, when you have rain, where does it go? Water is an amazing thing. It's very powerful, and it will find a way into your house if there is an easy way. You really want your slopes of your house to go away from your home, not towards it. And you want any of the drains, any gutters you have to be pushing out to something that's not going to fall back into a basement window. So really look for slopes away from the house. Bad things are, missing gutters. You're seeing pools of water or signs of pools of water against the house, slopes that grade into the house. If there's heavy rainfall, you might be dealing with a flooded basement. So I'd really look for that as well. Third thing we look for really in terms of big expenditures is the roof. So there's two things here: the roof covering and then the flashings around it. Really just looking for wear. Roofs are things that you over time do have to replace, but typically it's something like 20 to 25 years, hopefully even longer. And what you're really looking for is, all the shingles are basically there. There's, it's properly sealed. There's nothing curling. There's not a bunch of shingle loss from wind or other damage. That would be signs that you might need a replacement. On the flashings, they really keep wind coming in sideways from rain and really protect the edges of the house. So you're going to want to make sure that all your drip edges are there and that your flashings are properly installed. Moving into the house, we're going to look at next typically insulation or the attic. How is insulation? How is ventilation? How easy is it to access? You want tight, undamaged, adequate insulation for your place. And the insulation varies obviously where you are. If you're in a colder part of the United States, you need more, you need thicker. If you're in a warmer part, you still want some, but certainly not to the same degree. And you want to make sure there's no damage. Oftentimes it's a really good place to nest if you're a rat, if you're a bird. You want to make sure that nothing's happened there, or there, frankly, just wasn't any oversight and anything missing. Those are pretty manageable repairs, but are often helpful to bring up to negotiate. Next, we're going to look at, typically wall penetrations, sealants, any issues or gaps that are between the walls that often have ventilation problems and can be places for moisture to gather. So you really want to, just zone in, see if there's any mentions of, lack of sealant around plumbing pipes, around other fixtures. Could be indications that you're going to have a growing water problem over time. Now we're going to jump into the electrical side of systems. So what you often have here are kind of two or three different components. Like, how's the general service? How's the panel? Any sub panels you might have? Are they properly labeled? Are they properly surge protected? Are they up to code? Honestly, what you're really worried about there more than anything is fire risk, and then honestly a little bit of just painful home management. If you have a constant old circuit breaker that's tripping, you're going to want to get that replaced. But assuming that, everything's up to code, all the wires are, correctly handled, there's not a bunch of fray, you're usually in pretty good shape when it comes to this. But yeah, take a look at that. Make sure you understand it. Another piece here that people often overlook is how many conductors you have through one opening. Back in the 50s, back in the 60s, if you're in the Northeast where I am, a lot of these homes were built and the electrical codes weren't really standardized and people were kind of jerry-rigging things. It works, but again, really could be a fire hazard and is kind of a pain to have to fix later. So just make a note of it. And then, one of the other things here I'd mention is just, are your outlets up to snuff? So, GFCI or AFCI outlets typically used in kitchens and bathrooms, those ones that have the reset test button in the middle. They're there for a reason. They automatically turn themselves off in the case of moisture or water damage, so you don't have a bigger electrical problem. Again, older homes often won't have those. You're often going to want to get those retrofitted for safety reasons. So make a note of whether they're there or not. And finally, this goes into electrical, but also just a general life safety part of the home. Really check are smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms working up to grade. Are they in kind of the areas you would expect them, in multiple places throughout the home? And then, are there any other wires or extension cords that you're seeing around electrical components that really shouldn't be there for any damage? It's pretty atypical for that. I think, most modern homes really have all upgraded to have that right alarm system, but be careful when you're looking at that. Another part of the home that most people have nowadays is really HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, and cooling. And it's really, what is the condition of that system is what you're really trying to assess. So you can have all different types of systems. You can have a central, air conditioning with vents going throughout, the inside parts of the home. You can have mini splits. Just understanding what you have is number one. And then, based on that, what is the condition? So it can be a really expensive retrofit. You have to, really have people either open up walls or hopefully at least just go to the attic and the basement where a lot of this stuff is to replace those units. So understanding how old is it, understanding the quality of what it is, understanding what you're going to buy, and if you're going to need to make a quick purchase is important there. Moving to plumbing, there's a few different things here. Plumbing is, like I said at the top, water is an amazing thing. Plumbing can be a real problem and a growing problem. Pipes are often very old. Again, and you think about places in the Northeast, some of these older builds, you're going to want to really lean in there and make sure that your plumbing is all up to stuff. So a few different things you can look for here. Mentions of really high water pressure that are beating up kind of valves, appliances. It's going to run through, again, your appliances faster than you'd like. They'll kill their value. But also, you end up having these potential for pipe bursts, basically, when you have really high static water pressure. So typically look for any term that says something like high static water pressure. If there's a missing expansion tank, those are the types of things you're going to want to really look for. And that's a really easy credit to get and is often a pretty quick fix. Would highly recommend negotiating on that if that's there. Another part of plumbing, obviously, supply pipes, waste pipes, like what material are they? Are they corroded? Are they old? Are they galvanized, cast iron? Really understanding kind of the age and quality of those is very important. And seeing how likely it is you're going to have to replace them sooner. Because again, a one-off pipe isn't that bad, but if your whole piping system is corroded, you're going to have to replace pipes all over the house. It's a very expensive job. And if you don't, and you end up having a big problem, you could flood whole rooms of your house. Also look under the sinks and drains and try to see corrosion, any moisture that's built up there. Typically your home inspector will find this stuff, but make a note of it. Oftentimes it's isolated, which is great, but it's, again, something to negotiate against and something you're going to want to just prepare for a potential problem. Another piece here is, backflow prevention. So basically, exterior spouts, the stuff that you hook up your hose to outside when you're going to water your lawn or your plants, they need backflow prevention to make sure you're not having contaminants come in and siphon the clean water you have in your house from the outside. Make a note of that. You'll see, that it's missing backflow prevention typically is what's mentioned for exterior hose bibs. So make a note of that. Last thing on plumbing here, at least kind of internal, is the kitchen water flow. So understanding if there's low flow at the faucet, if there's any active leaks, you're just going to want to see, is mineral buildup there? Are there failures in the cartridge? Like, what's the quality and condition of the sinks and the water flow to them? Basically, over time, particularly if you have harder water, you're going to see some sort of mineral buildup, some sort of like pipe corrosion. And so understanding, is the water hard where you are? Have those systems been properly maintained or, replaced recently is a really helpful way to just not get hit with a, several $1,000 bill for a kitchen cleanup. Last three things here we typically look for are really bathroom moisture, any tub issues. So you'll often see stains, either, those kind of water stains you see in the ceiling or in the adjacent walls to showers. That's a pretty good note that there's been some moisture or water damage that's lingering. Could be a good indicator of a repair you need to make. It could be a good indicator of some sort of dehumidifying or ventilation that you need in that room, but oftentimes it's something you'll have to retrofit. So it's just a good thing to make a note of, not something to blow up over, but important. Another one here is garages. Just test it. I mean, it's as simple as that. You think that it's pretty simple to deal with the garage, but actually to repair them is very technical and expensive, and frankly not something you can do yourself. It's something we often don't recommend in CASA, as opposed to many of the other things we've talked about you could do yourself. It's dangerous. So make sure it's working properly, understand the age of it, of the system, and if you're going to have to do any repairs or upgrades. And then finally, last thing to look at is just general insulation of the home. Really, we talked about insulation at the top, and that's really the quality insulation that's there. But really what you're thinking about here is effectively, what is the energy bill going to be for this home, particularly in the extremely hot and extremely cold seasons? Is my home energy efficient? Is my home going to have a really high energy bill? Otherwise, even homes next to each other, just depending on how they're built and how they're maintained, can be vastly different energy footprints and costs for you. So understand what you're getting into on that ongoing monthly payment. So that's kind of the main things we look at, in these types of reports. But, the last thing I can leave you with here is really, what do you do with this, right? So it's a great report. You need to get it. It probably should give you some peace of mind. Hopefully it isn't too overwhelming. But it's useful, in a lot of ways. I think the most pressing one that people overlook is really using it to negotiate. So Typically, the best thing to do is try to summarize this stuff into buckets. If you try to nitpick on one-off things, it becomes kind of petty in some sense. So the best thing to do is to typically group, we like to say like three buckets. So sort of things that are health and safety, like effectively they should fix it or pay you like the full freight to fix it. It's, not unlivable. That would be a bit extreme, but it could be hazardous. That's things like the GFCI outlets we talked about, missing smoke or carbon monoxide alarms, garage door damage, electrical systems that are like very far away from code, have like wrong junction wires. Like that would be the type of things I'm talking about that could cause fire risk, severe water damage. Gas leaks, that type of thing. So be very, very careful and call those out. Those are important. The second thing is really water management. You'll probably have a good sense of this, and they should too, of like how many times are they dealing with external water coming in because of improper grading, bad gutters, bad sealant, whatever that might be, as well as internal. I would say like the internal ones, if they're a little more one-off, it's worth calling out, and you might get something back for it, particularly if the damage near a tub or shower is extensive. You've seen a lot of leaks, but oftentimes it's reasonably cleaned up. The bigger thing you're going to want to look for here really is external water flow into your home. It can be incredibly damaging, really inconvenient, and incredibly expensive to get fixed, but also just to get someone out in an emergency, when storm is probably happening to everyone else in your neighborhood is really hard. So we really recommend being prepared for that. And then the last thing is just kind of the big ticket end of life pieces. So like the roof, the quality of the plumbing system, big appliances, think about refrigerators, washer dryers, if they're towards end of life, the HVAC system, the water heater, all of those pieces kind of, if they're going to have to be repaired in the next 1 to 2 years, that's something to negotiate against, and bring your price down, or at least get some sort of abatement. It should really be clear and objective. Come back with one list at one time. Don't drag it out. Obviously, like there might be other people looking at this house. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot over these tiny little things, but coming back with one clear ask of here's what we found, here's what we think is fair. You might not get everything you want, but you often get an abatement, and people appreciate the diligence of the house. Look, that's kind of all we talk about today with home inspections. If you like this, if it helped, hit like, hit subscribe. We'll be making a few more of these longer form content pieces as it relates to the home over time. And as I mentioned at the top, download Casa, upload your home inspection. It's totally free. You can, we'll give you a condition score. We'll help you ask questions about your home inspection. Basically like if you had me or you had a home inspector to talk to, and just understand it in a lot more detail. 50 plus pages of dense reading about home systems that you don't understand is really overwhelming, but we really can break it out and make it simpler for you. So I'd highly recommend you try it, and we'll build you out an action plan, based on that to make sure that your home is totally up to grade and very livable once you do move in. So anyways, that's it for me today. Hope you like this, and good luck with buying your home.